December 1975. Memphis, Tennessee. A Cadillac dealership. A woman named Minnie Person walked into the showroom. She was 70 years old, African American. She worked as a maid. She'd been saving money for years, dreaming of one day owning a car. She walked around the lot, looking at the cars, touching them gently, imagining what it would be like to drive one. A salesman approached her. "Can I help you, ma'am?" "I'm just looking," Minnie said. "I've been saving up maybe one day." The salesman nodded politely, but he didn't think she could afford anything on the lot. Then the door opened. A man walked in, tall, wearing sunglasses, a scarf around his neck. He moved quickly, quietly. It was Elvis Presley. The salesman's eyes widened. "Mr. Presley, what can I do for you today?" Elvis looked around the showroom. Then he saw Minnie, standing by a blue Cadillac, her hand resting on the hood, a wistful look in her eyes. Elvis walked over to her. "You like this one?" he asked. Minnie turned. She recognized him immediately. Her hand went to her chest. "Oh, my lord, Elvis Presley." Elvis smiled. "That's me. You looking at this car?" "Yes, sir. I've been saving for years, but I don't think I can afford it yet." Elvis looked at the car. Then he looked at the salesman. "How much is this one?" "This model is $11,000, Mr. Presley." Elvis pulled out his checkbook. He wrote a check, handed it to the salesman. "This car is hers now." The salesman stared at the check. Minnie stared at Elvis. "What?" she whispered. "The car is yours," Elvis said. "Merry Christmas." Minnie's eyes filled with tears. I can't accept this." "Yes, you can," Elvis said gently. "Enjoy it. Drive safe." He turned and walked out. Before Minnie could say anything else, before anyone could take a photo, before the moment could become a spectacle, he was gone. Minnie Person drove that Cadillac for the rest of her life, and she never forgot the man who gave it to her. But here's the thing nobody knew. Elvis did this all the time, hundreds of times, and he never told anyone. He never wanted credit. He never wanted publicity. He just wanted to help. Elvis Presley grew up poor, dirt poor, in Tupelo, Mississippi. His family lived in a 2-room shotgun house. No electricity, no running water. His father, Vernon, worked odd jobs. His mother, Gladys, took in laundry. They barely had enough to eat. Elvis remembered what it was like to be hungry, to wear hand-me-down clothes, to be looked down on because you were poor. When he became famous, when the money started pouring in, he didn't forget. He never forgot. In 1956, right after Heartbreak Hotel made him a star, Elvis went back to Tupelo. He performed a homecoming concert. All the proceeds went to the city to build a new park in the neighborhood where he grew up. But that was public. That was known. What people didn't know was what he did privately. In 1957, Elvis heard about a family in Memphis whose house had burned down. They lost everything. He didn't know them, but he sent them a check for $5,000, anonymously. No note, no name. The family used the money to rebuild. They never knew who sent it. That was how Elvis operated. Quietly, secretly, without fanfare. "Why don't you want people to know?" his friends would ask. "Because it's not about me," Elvis would say. "It's about them." In 1961, Elvis was in Hawaii filming Blue Hawaii. One afternoon, he was driving around Honolulu. He stopped at a red light. A man was standing on the corner, holding a sign. "USS Arizona Memorial Fund. Please donate." Elvis rolled down his window. "What's this for?" the man explained. The USS Arizona had been sunk during the Pearl Harbor attack in 1941. More than 1,100 sailors died. The government wanted to build a memorial, but they didn't have enough money. Elvis listened. Then he said, "How much do you need?" "We're trying to raise $500,000. We're about halfway there." Elvis nodded. He drove away. The next day, Elvis held a benefit concert. The entire proceeds, $62,000, went to the USS Arizona Memorial Fund. It was enough to complete the project. The memorial was built, opened in 1962, still stands today. Elvis never talked about it publicly. When reporters asked, he just said it was the right thing to do. But here's what people didn't know. Elvis also made a personal donation, $50,000, anonymously. He didn't want credit for that either. Total contribution, $112,000. In 1961 money, equivalent to nearly $1 million today. He never mentioned it again. In the 1960s and 1970s, Elvis had a habit. Whenever he went shopping, he'd bring extra money. Not for himself, for strangers. He'd walk into a store, see someone looking at something they couldn't afford, and he'd buy it for them. One time, in 1974, Elvis was at a jewelry store in Memphis. A young couple was looking at engagement rings. The woman was trying on a small diamond. The man looked nervous, checking the price tag, calculating if he could afford it. Elvis walked over. "You like that one?" he asked the woman. She nodded. "It's beautiful, but it's a little out of our price range." Elvis turned to the jeweler. "I'll take it, and I'll take that one too." He pointed to a bigger diamond. "Give them both. Let them choose." The couple was stunned. "Mr. Presley, we can't—" "Yes, you can," Elvis said. "You're getting married. That's special. Enjoy it." He paid. Then he left. Before they could thank him properly, the couple chose the bigger ring. They got married, and 50 years later, they still tell the story. But they're not alone. There are hundreds of stories like this. In 1975, Elvis was driving through Memphis late at night. He saw a woman standing on the side of the road. Her car had broken down. She was crying. Elvis pulled over. "You need help?" The woman looked up. She couldn't believe it. "Elvis Presley." "That's me." "What's wrong with your car?" "I don't know. It just stopped. And I don't have money to fix it." Elvis looked at the car. Then he said, "Wait here." He drove to a nearby gas station, got a mechanic, brought him back. The mechanic fixed the car. Elvis paid him. Then he gave the woman $200. "For gas and whatever else you need." The woman was crying. "Why are you doing this?" Elvis smiled. "Because someone did it for me once, when I was broke, and I never forgot." He drove away. The woman never saw him again, but she told her children and her grandchildren. And they all remember the night Elvis Presley stopped to help their mother. In December 1976, Elvis was at Graceland. It was a few weeks before Christmas. He was reading the newspaper. He saw an article about St. Jude Children's Research Hospital in Memphis. They were running low on funds. They might have to turn away patients. Elvis put down the newspaper. He called his accountant. "I want to make a donation to St. Jude. $100,000, but don't use my name." His accountant was used to this. "Anonymous?" "Anonymous." The check was sent. St. Jude received it. They didn't know who sent it, but it kept the hospital running through the holidays. Years later, after Elvis died, the hospital found records. They traced the donation. It was Elvis, but he never wanted anyone to know. One of the most famous stories happened in 1974. Elvis was shopping at a car dealership. He was looking at cars for himself. A woman walked in with her husband. They were looking at a station wagon. Elvis overheard their conversation. The woman said, "I don't know, honey. It's a lot of money." Her husband said, "But your car is breaking down. You need something reliable." Elvis walked over. "Excuse me, I couldn't help but overhear. You need a car?" The woman nodded. "Yes, but we're just looking." Elvis turned to the salesman. "How much is that station wagon?" $8,500. Elvis wrote a check, handed it to the salesman. "It's theirs now." The couple was speechless. The woman started crying. "Why? Why would you do this?" Elvis shrugged. "Because I can, and because you need it. Enjoy the car." He left. The woman never forgot. Years later, she told a reporter, "Elvis saved my life that day. I was struggling. I didn't know how I'd get my kids to school. And he just gave me a car. No strings attached. He didn't even tell me his name. I recognized him, but he acted like it was no big deal." But it was a big deal. To her, and to hundreds of others. Elvis didn't just give money and cars. He gave time. In the 1960s, Elvis would visit hospitals, unannounced. No press, no cameras. He'd walk into children's wards, sit with sick kids, talk to them, sing to them, make them smile. One nurse from Memphis remembered, Elvis would show up at midnight sometimes. No security, just him. He'd sit with kids who were dying, hold their hands, tell them jokes. He'd stay for hours, and he'd always say, "Don't tell the press. I don't want this to be a story. I just want to be here." Another nurse said, "One time, a little girl was terrified of her surgery. Elvis sat with her for 3 hours, singing lullabies. When she finally fell asleep, he kissed her forehead and left. The next day, she told everyone that Elvis had been her guardian angel. She wasn't scared anymore." Elvis never talked about these visits. No photos, no interviews, just quiet acts of kindness. In 1970, Elvis met a man named Jerry Schilling. Jerry worked for him. One day, Jerry mentioned that his mother was struggling to pay her medical bills. She had cancer. The treatments were expensive. Elvis didn't say anything. A week later, Jerry's mother called him. "Jerry, the hospital just told me my bills are paid. All of them. Do you know anything about this?" Jerry called Elvis. "Did you pay my mom's medical bills?" Elvis paused. "Don't worry about it." "Elvis, that was over $20,000. "I said don't worry about it. Your mom needs to focus on getting better, not on bills." Jerry's mother survived. She lived another 15 years, and she never stopped being grateful. By the mid-1970s, Elvis was giving away hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. Cars, houses, hospital bills, tuition, rent, groceries. His accountant would plead with him. "Elvis, you need to slow down. You're spending more than you're making." "I don't care," Elvis would say. "What's the point of having money if you don't help people?" "But you're going broke." Elvis shrugged. "Then I'll make more money. But I'm not stopping." Colonel Parker hated it. "You're being irresponsible," he'd yell. "You can't save everyone." "I'm not trying to save everyone," Elvis said. "I'm trying to help the people I can." And he did. Right up until the day he died. August 16th, 1977, Elvis Presley died. In the weeks and months that followed, stories started coming out. People who had been helped by Elvis, people who had never told anyone. A man in Mississippi came forward. "Elvis paid for my son's funeral. I couldn't afford it. Elvis heard about it somehow. Sent me a check, anonymously. I didn't know it was him until after he died." A woman in Tennessee. "Elvis bought my family a house. We were being evicted. He heard about it, bought us a house, gave us the deed, didn't want any recognition." A veteran in California. "Elvis paid for my surgery. I was homeless, sick. He saw me on the street, took me to a hospital, paid for everything, gave me money to get back on my feet, changed my life." Hundreds of stories, thousands of acts of kindness, all done in secret. After Elvis died, someone estimated that he had given away more than $8 million in his lifetime, equivalent to over $40 million today. But nobody knows the exact amount, because Elvis never kept track. He didn't want to. "Why do you do this?" someone once asked him. Elvis thought for a moment. Then he said, "Because I remember what it was like to have nothing, and I don't ever want to forget." In 2007, a book was published, Elvis, Generous Heart. It collected stories from people who had been helped by Elvis, people who had kept quiet for decades. One story stood out, a woman named Martha Cunningham. She had been a single mother in Memphis in 1968. struggling to feed her 3 kids. One day she was at the grocery store, counting pennies, trying to figure out what she could afford. A man approached her, tall, wearing sunglasses, a hat pulled low. "Excuse me," he said. "I couldn't help but notice. You need some help?" Martha looked up. She recognized him immediately. "Mr. Presley?" Elvis smiled. "How much do you need?" "Oh, I couldn't—" "How much?" Martha hesitated. "Maybe $50, just to get through the week?" Elvis pulled out his wallet. He gave her $500. "This should get you through a few months." Martha started crying. "Why?" Elvis put his hand on her shoulder. "Because my mama used to stand where you're standing, counting pennies, wondering how she'd feed me, and I swore that if I ever had money, I'd help people like her, people like you." He walked away. Martha never saw him again. But she raised her 3 kids. They all graduated college. They all became successful. And they all knew it was because of Elvis. In 2007, when Martha was interviewed for the book, she said, "Elvis Presley saved my family, not because he wanted recognition, not because he wanted to be famous, but because he had a good heart, and the world needs to know that." Today, more than 45 years after Elvis's death, people are still coming forward with stories. Stories of kindness, stories of generosity, stories of a man who never forgot where he came from. In 2019, a man named Robert Lewis gave an interview. He said, "In 1975, I was homeless, sleeping on the streets of Memphis. One night, Elvis drove by. He stopped, rolled down his window, asked if I needed help. I said yes. He took me to a hotel, paid for a month, gave me $1,000, told me to get back on my feet. I did. I got a job, got an apartment, got my life together, and I never got to thank him." Robert paused, tears in his eyes. "Elvis Presley saved my life, and he didn't even know my name." That's who Elvis was. Not the superstar, not the icon, not the legend. Just a man who remembered what it was like to be poor, and who spent his life trying to help others who were struggling. He didn't do it for recognition. He didn't do it for fame. He didn't do it for publicity. He did it because it was right. And maybe that's the most important part of his legacy. Not the music, not the movies, not the fame, but the thousands of lives he touched, quietly, secretly, without asking for anything in return. Elvis Presley died on August 16, 1977, but his generosity lives on, in the stories, in the memories, in the lives he changed. Because that's what real kindness is. It doesn't ask for applause, it doesn't need recognition, it just gives, freely, generously, without expectation. And that's what Elvis did, every single day of his life, the king of rock and roll, but more importantly, a man with a generous heart.